Why do we have a picture of a disgruntled Microsoft CEO? I
wonder.
Satya Nadella. Well, the reason would be because they've been all over the place. Look at this. At this point, just wait on chasing and upgrading Primordial Stones for a few days. Ring's gone from a 5,000 DPS loss to a 1,200 gain. Now it's a 1,500 loss. Please add secondary stats. Thank you.
That would be the bandage fix, look.
Blizzard went, you could say, a little bit daring, saying this bit of jewelry has no secondary stats. It will just have effects. To the point where even, right, they've had to say Primordial Stone buffs are live on the World of Warcraft Twitter account.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It's... I should have checked replies, see if they're getting climbed on in it. I think they were a little bit. Yeah,
definitely.
But it is just... They decided to do a thing, but the thing applies across the entirety of the game and the entirety of the players. And everyone's going, But it also involves balance where clearly the person making this, I imagine, was kind of separated from a lot of the teams or kind of made it in isolation and wasn't able to say, wasn't able to go, hey, priest designer, shadow priest designer, you're the balancer of this. What do I need to do to make sure this works? And probably didn't do that for all of the specs. And that's why there's stuff where like someone's coming around going, hey, with no secondaries, this is never going to be, unless this is stupid broken, this is never going to work. And it can't be stupid broken because it applies to literally everyone. So you lose the fine tuning of, like a tier set. If a tier set's busted, you go, I can change the tier set for that spec. Fine. But for this, it's just, this is going to apply differently to every spec. So how do we make it good? But we don't want to make it insane. How do you solve this? And it's ultimately a case of, I think they tried something, they thought it was cool, but they just aren't able to execute on it balancing wise because their specs are they're so complicated, and you're not dealing with 10s and 15% when it comes to spec differences. You're looking at a 1%, as we actually have proof of, like a 5% difference in what they expect to what's reality can completely shift the rankings and go, no, that's completely and utterly pointless. So I get the idea of wanting a bit of catch up, but it looks like it's just a failed experiment. And it could have, there's a world where it went okay.
Yeah, and in a week it could be more okay, but there are fundamental issues that will be hard to overcome.
That's the problem. It's where the fundamentals come in and you go, well, can you overcome the fundamental issues without going back on your promise or your idea? Because they could just make it a very strong ring with bonus effects.
Yeah,
and then it loses like we have to go back on that. What secondary stats do we have? Because certain classes like secondary stats. Do we have customizable secondary stats? Now we have a load more work to do for this, and then that results in other problems where people are like, well, what if I need the same gems in this and the same gems in this, and then I know you can buy a second amulet.
I thought that was cool. Yeah,
that's really cool for different gem loadouts. And it's like, but then I have to get different ones to different stats and change them around loads. So I feel like there's a load of minutia where they dared to go, this is a cool item and it's powerful and you want it. And then everyone's like, good luck. And they just weren't able to capitalize. And that's why they've had to buff it a dozen times. I mean, it's like 3 or 4 times in a row. And then everyone's like, this is now great for this spec, but shit for this spec.
At least they've been quick. I think ultimately what happened in a way is they took that item budget away from the secondary stats, and that meant that those effects whenever they proc will be more noticeable. Will feel better. So they kind of cleared room, but then,
which funny enough is the exact it's the exact opposite of what they're doing with the very rare items. Because the weapon procs from the what's it called? Ashkandar, the two-hand sword, and then Jaren, the polearm, they've notably, instead of like old weapons being this way, they've actually kept secondary stats and weakened the proc substantially instead of having the proc replace secondaries, because secondaries are way too key to how scaling works. So obviously whoever did that and whoever worked on this ring and ideated this ring weren't on the same page in that regard.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a little bit of like reward design teams being slightly too compartmentalized or something there, or something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe this was like a world reward instead of maybe this wasn't done by like the raid reward team or something like that. And that's ultimately been this separate kind of, this separation of, you're doing things right here, but you're not doing them right here. So that might have been the case. It is unfortunate that it's kind of been a pretty substantial downer for a lot of players on a patch that's otherwise really cool.
Yeah. I'm... Like, broadly speaking, the picture is so good that I'm kind of okay with it. It's the sort of thing, because this is happening later on in a tier, where it's not as make or break, that certainly helps reduce the sting.
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
But if this was to happen at the start of a tier, then you could really imagine a situation where it's like, well, people are in raid now. People are making kind of gearing decisions.
Yeah, but that's the problem. People are making gearing decisions now because this ring is intended to carry people who aren't at the top end into Season 2.
Yeah.
Which means you've got this issue of, well, how are you going to do this? Are they going to make this work? Give it the time, or are they going to say, whatever, deal with it? And that's the thing of Blizzard recently haven't been very bad at that. They haven't been the kind of Blizzard that go, well, that was a failure, you're stuck with it for 6 months or a year, or, the whole expansion. They've not been doing that at all. But people still are like, well, they could do it at any time. They could just say, no, this is best now. We've made it super strong, so you have to use it. Go fuck yourselves. And, sorry about that. Is it Shadow Priests, I think? Shadow Priests or Boomkins, or maybe both, are like, they scale so well with secondaries that the effects are kind of shit for them, no matter what. And I go, oh yeah, well, especially when they have they can't use the interrupt one anyway. Well, they can, but on a very long cooldown. But like, yeah,
you need to tune them on a per spec basis
instead
of them being one size fits all, which is complicated.
Yeah, so you look, this is planned going into Season 2 as part of the budget. Okay, so does that mean that for the start of Season 2, for the first week or two,
for once in my life, I'm well hydrated, so I can't.
Yeah, no worries. So for the first 3 weeks maybe of Season 2, are you going to have an issue of just, sorry, classes that this ring doesn't work very well for, you're a bit scundered, you're a bit scuppered. I think that's ultimately the issue going forward here, but I think they've done I kind of trust them to at least leave it in a salvageable position, but it is also happy that they've done this now, because imagine if they did this when 10.1 launched. It'd be such a nightmare. It'd be such an absolute nightmare. Yeah, and that's the thing, like Sebastian there says, Boomy, ring's crap for them. Doesn't care less. Fine without it. Doesn't matter. Only a game. Not going to act like I'm in a world first race of that go. See, I completely can see that, and I would largely agree with the sentiment, but it is a case of where on the spectrum of reality matters to you, I think, because you might not particularly care, but you might be the one who's cognizant that you don't care. But then there's people who are just to certain people, it just feels bad not being optimal, or it feels bad being left out in a way. And yeah, I think adding secondary stat stones is a good solution. But I think that's the key issue, right? Blizzard are like, hey, here's the thing, and it's busted, and we clearly had the wrong idea. Now we have to fix it, and we have to triage, and it's bleeding out. We have to do something with it. And then just people in chat are like, how about this? Or like, there you go. That's brilliant. Now, the issue with the secondary stat stone is that obviously that would impact the combos you could do. But actually, I suppose if they just went, we couldn't be bothered with those effects, didn't work for us, we'll take the secondary stats instead. But then that would be a little bit boring for them. And I think that was just not in the consideration. It's like I suggested about potentially this maybe being from a different part of the team, or a different a different side of it. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just whoops, we weren't able to completely get this fully right. But it's that awful thing if I kind of trust them to matter. Is this ring considered a borrowed power? That's where it's difficult, because you could easily go yes, because it's an item you get that will become irrelevant. But that's the case of most gear. So I would argue realistically no, but it does come with some of the downsides of borrowed power kind of does, which is just all of the balance concerns, all of the how does this interact with classes for a limited time. So it's a little bit weird in that sense. But yeah, it's a catch-up item. It's not for min-maxers. That's the problem. They intentionally made it for min-maxers for a very short period of time, but still, They very much they wanted to be the best item for people now, to give them something to chase for, which I think ultimately is just, hey, we wanted these people to have something to do, and it also works for all these other people. So we'll build it up. We'll make this ring. We'll make it strong, and we should definitely be using it until season 2, and then you'll replace it early. And because they did that, instead of going, hey, this is about as strong as a maybe heroic plus or a just under mythic ring, and that'll do. Then a lot of the players who were able to sim the shit out of it and go, this is actually better, would have went, it's not for us, and then this wouldn't have happened, which I think is also frustrating because the way that the upgrade system basically doesn't have any function for mythic players once they're mythic geared in the next season is them very obviously going, what's the gear treadmill and upgrade system? What's that really for? That's for people who want to get some progress over time. The mythic people, they want to get their gear and have their gear and be done with it. And surely they'll like to upgrade like the heroic stuff on the way up, and they'll likely farm that out. But there's a point, if you go to like here, and this is like mythic levels, like anything beyond that, we want to keep that reined in, want to keep that fixed, want to keep that for a different sort of people. And then you go to the other side, it's like, hey, you up here, do whatever you want. It's all about people having fun and progressing the game at the speed they like and the speed they enjoy. But then the other bits are just like, yeah, let mythic players do whatever they want, but keep it simpler for them. Because as soon as you let them have an impact on the rest of the game, then suddenly, I don't want to. The phrase that came to mind is people start dancing to their tune, which is a little unfair to them because they're just trying to do what they do best. It's like if you don't have an intentional wall between the communities for most things, then there ends up being opinion and ideas bleeding through. And it's like that. Was it an ex-League of Legends person had a Twitter thread about how they saw basically a lot of stuff happening in League that was the high-end players' opinions would be adopted non-critically by people who it didn't apply to.
Yeah.
And then they would say, oh, well, we mirror the high-end opinion, without realizing that the high-end opinion actually makes the game worse for them because it's a single game. Whereas in WoW's case, you can kind of just build a wall between the two and say, hello, here's for the people who, and I mean this in a nice way, aren't insane. And here's the part for the players who are insane. Both of you will have optimal fun and none of you will scream at each other. Fantastic. And I feel
optimistic of you.
And I feel like that's what they're largely doing. But there's certain times where, like, they're doing that now where they weren't before. And this is a part of, this is what, it's not as bad, but this is kind of Shadowlands-y in feel. This is kind of BFA in feel. In a microcosm. But it kind of is. And that's where everyone's going, that's got the bad juju. We don't want that bad juju no more. Give us the good one. You know, all this new stuff, give us more of that, please. I think that's where a lot of the issue is. Like, yeah,
it's a wound that's been poked.
Exactly. I don't want to say it's a mistake because they could be able to work it in, and then the acquisition and stuff might be really nice, but they really do need to go, okay, how do we make this not a problem immediately? And I think one of the frustrating things about the community is, this is like universal among all communities. It's like, if a problem goes under the rug, then the problem ceases to exist because there's a lot of mountains made out of molehills by the nature of online communication and forum posting. And obviously, like, I wouldn't say that to cover up actual problems, but this is definitely like a really minor asterisk on, like I say, otherwise a great patch.